Good afternoon and welcome to Stade Télus, Laval University. This is Bill McNeil on the microphone, and I will be joined by Jackie Titley, who is working with the Ontario programs. As the game is about to start, I'll get on with the presentation of the lineups straight away. With the Nova Scotia Keltics at number 1, Sarah McLeod. At number 2, Claudia Fulton. At number 3, Maddie Haroun. Number 4, Sophie Carracher. Number 5, Kathleen Curran. Number 6, Brinton Como. Number 7, Dom Runball. Number 8, Kenzie Ketigo. And on to the backs. At number 9, Justine Blatt-Janmat. 10, Hannah Ellis. 11, Alish Redshaw. 12, Amber Mooney. 13, Rita Abdullah. 14, Katia Dondi. 15, Catherine Brennan. The subs are 16, McGee McPhee. 17, Emily Duffy. 18, Jade Borden-Lee. 19, Kate Flanagan. 20, Maddie Shea. 21, Tori Hogan. 22, Annie McMullen. 23, Chantel Brewer. And the game has already started. You're going to do a color.
Well, the Blues have started moving forward. A good take off the kickoff, but unfortunately they've lost it. They've lost it in contact here and given a penalty away. So off go the Keltics. And moving the ball towards the outside. Nice tackle by the Blues here, stopping them right at the gain line. But the Keltics maintain possession and move the ball up, look for a ball over the top, and put some good pressure into the Blues 22. Fullback Roberta Drummond under a lot of pressure here, and the Keltics have a good opportunity to turn the ball over. So they've given a penalty away for going over the top, but good pressure from them.
And Celtics have started the game quite well. They started the game against Quebec well yesterday. We'll see if they can keep up the momentum.
So Blues moving up the field a little bit, getting just outside of their 22. And let's see what they have in store for us at the lineout.
The referee for today's game is Valentin Verdier. The touch judges are Chris Micheletti and Pierre Garcia.
So the Blues go off the top and move the ball out to the centers, taking the ball upfield well at pace here, making well beyond the gain line, and going to the short side. Good decision, lots of space out there. Again, ball back to the fly half into a pod running outside, a forward pod. And great use of space. The Blues fly half has spotted a big chunk of, and mishandled by the fullback, the Celtics fullback. The Blues have maintained possession here. Again, the 12 gets us moving forward, and we move the ball out across the side of the field. Almost intercepted, but may have been tipped.
In fact, that player coming forward might have been a bit offside. However, when we go back to the breakdown, the referee had seen a knock-on, I believe.
So we'll come back for a scrum, Blues ball.
Well, Ontario has certainly proven that they can go forward quite quickly and control possession. A couple of little mistakes by Nova Scotia, but they pay a heavy price every time they make one.
Nice big short side here. Let's see if they come this way. Oh, the Celtics dominating the scrum and turning the ball over against the head against the Blues. So having to transition to defense. Let's see. And giving away a penalty at the same time. So letting the Celtics off easy here. They take the ball going forward, quick tap. Blues not back 10s, so the Celtics having advantage again.
Ontario won't be happy about being out hustled on that one. And another penalty. Well, they can't afford to lack discipline.
So this was the second penalty for not being back 10, not allowed to go quickly, so they'll have to reset, probably go for touch and take a little bit of territory. Nice touch finder there from the Keltics, moving them well up the field. Exciting to see so many new players out there at the provincial level. Right, Bill?
Yes, exactly, and also to have them all here in one place for 3 days, it gives everybody a chance to see what the general level is.
Mm-hmm. And the ball turned over here, not taken cleanly by the Keltics, so the Blues in possession at the base of the line out. Taken forward. Ooh, a low pass, but handled well by the Blues fly half. Keltics coming up and putting a lot of pressure, but Blues still moving forward. Oh, nice variation there from the Blues.
Yeah, I'd say the Blues are showing a little bit more imagination than I've seen in the past. They were taking advantage of a penalty advantage, obviously, and now Mr. Verdier has come back to the mark.
Oh, I see that defensive pressure came from a little bit of an offside, so.
Yeah. Yeah, well, some people would call that anticipation.
Not finding touch here, the Blues, so the Keltics taking that ball, moving forward.
This was a little unusual aspect of the games yesterday, is kicking for touch and not finding touch. Maybe they're having problems with the lines, I'm not sure.
It is quite a wide field. I know I found so when I was playing here. It's a big field if you're not used to it.
It was wider when you were playing.
No, was it? And the Keltics moving the ball well. Oh, unfortunately, that passed a little bit too much for that winger to handle, and she's knocked it forward.
Yeah,
but they were moving the ball well to the outside there.
Question is it one pass more than you needed, or is it just that last pass that's going to make the difference?
I'm sure they'll continue to ask themselves that.
Sure. Nova Scotia's got some ambition, but it's just a question of how long they can last and whether their ambitions are concretized or not. Mm-hmm. They got to get some points on the board.
Interesting defense here. The Keltics very compressed 10, 12, 13 and leaving quite a big gap outside of 13. If the Blues can move the ball to the outside, they might have some space to work with.
It seems that the Nova Scotia women's pack is giving their Ontario colleagues a bit of a hard time. Ontario is having trouble stabilizing.
Yeah, they're going to want to get that ball out as quickly as possible, I'm sure. Lucky for them, the ball's gone out and and it's a line out instead. Only Celtics possession.
Let's see how they do with the line out. A little bit messy. Ontario manages to get it.
And knocked forward by the Keltics, so we'll come back for a scrum. Lots of stoppages in play. Not too much flow yet into this game, but we're only 5 minutes in, so I'm sure the players will take the next few minutes to really settle into a rhythm.
There may be a few nervous hands out there.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure that Nova Scotia wants a much better performance than they got from either the development or the senior squad games yesterday.
Yeah, they'll be looking to redeem themselves in a certain way.
And Ontario's got to break the ice, so it's always a question of that, which is better, to be there and rested or to already have a game under your belt.
Mm-hmm. The Ontario 8-man taking the ball, moving forward, getting them on the front foot. Celtics slowing the ball down nicely, but Ontario's still ready to go.
I saw a little bit of that Celtics defense yesterday, which was in part rush, but not completely. There were usually some gaps. Ontario does well to keep possession of the ball, but Nova Scotia's contesting.
And Nova Scotia really putting in a big physical performance here. They're really taking it to Ontario every time they choose to take contact. But Ontario with some space here, moving the ball to the outside.
A lot of work to be able to get back to the gain line, and still it looks like Nova Scotia's managed to steal the ball, so a little bit too bad about that kick.
Yeah, good vision. The fullback was retreating, but maybe poorly executed. Probably didn't go exactly where she wanted it to.
And that breakdown is a bit of a mess, and it looks like the referees decided he doesn't like it.
Yeah, fair enough. Ontario on the Celtic side of the ball, prohibiting that ball from getting back. So Celtics take it quickly, and
well, what they don't want is for Ontario to get organized. And it seems to be working at the moment, although she looks like she's going to get isolated.
yeah, gone by herself, but she's
No,
done
they
well.
managed to
Support's
get
done
it.
well to get there.
A little bit of
Ooh.
miscommunication in the back there, went off somebody's shin, and a penalty. I believe the player who managed to get on to the ball from Nova Scotia was a bit offside.
Yeah, I think Ontario let off easy there a little bit. Celtics really looked like they had their tails up, mounting a good attack.
Well, there we go. We get into a bit, and here we go. Managed not to get that into touch, and we're getting right hard back up into the face of the defense.
Nice tackle there made by Ontario. Still good tackles. They've got to keep up that line speed.
It is good of Nova Scotia to be able to maintain possession at this point when they're getting hotly contested. If they can move that ball out, it might produce something. Nicely up, a little bit of a miscommunication between the wing and the outside center. They're making progress. Back up Highway 1.
Oh, yeah, and they're playing with advantage, penalty advantage to the Celtics. They don't seem to be going anywhere, so we might see that penalty awarded sooner
Well,
rather
if
than later.
we might have been, if that player decided to keep going with the flow, we might have seen a little bit more action outside. But
And now we're moving forward. Maybe a little bit hesitant, that player taking the ball into contact.
and the
She's
referee has
taking
seen
the-
something.
That's another penalty I think Ontario will get a talking to here. Maybe a bit of a warning. Several penalties in a row.
Well, it's all to Nova Scotia's credit that they're putting Ontario under pressure, and they have to make repeated penalties to slow down the Nova Scotia attack.
That's something they'll want to refine if they want to play outside of their own 22 this game.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting choice.
Going for the scrum on a penalty here. Well, the Celtics have already shown that they're dominant in the scrum area.
We've played about 9 minutes in this game so far, and Ontario hasn't seen much of them. Nova Scotia half of the field.
That's true. Not since kickoff, and they crossed the center and looked threatening, but gave the ball away right on the other side.
Nova Scotia continues to do a good job at the set piece, but lost control of the ball coming out of the number 8's feet.
Great pressure from the Ontario 9. A bit of a fracture in that defense that the Celtics 10 has seen.
Yeah, just needed the
quickly
support.
Turned over.
A little bit of grafting there.
Taken up high, but
Let's see what they do now. This could be more interesting.
Ontario 9 looking to play on the short side. They get moving forward.
Fortunately, their forwards there. They save their bacon. I'd like to see this ball travel a little bit here. It looks like we're going to open the game. No, back into another set of forwards.
Well, they're still making the gain line, so
Well,
we'll be a little bit slow to handle that ball. So by the time she looked to the
I was really
outside-
wondering about a couple of people on the Nova Scotia side who seem to be on the wrong side of the offside line, but the referee doesn't seem to think much of it. And
Ontario lucky to maintain possession off of that box kick
Indeed,
getting blocked.
slowly but surely,
Not a bad decision, as Ontario is playing with one lonely fullback back there at the moment.
true, and I don't see anybody in the middle at the back for Ontario right now.
Although now they've dropped.
There she goes. Look at that counterattack. In fact, the time seems to me the time for that kick had somewhat past.
Oh,
And straight into
out on the
touch.
full. She'll be disappointed with that one, coming all the way back to
Yeah,
the
so
50.
so will the three people that were outside of her, I think.
I seem to remember a time or two when I kicked away a numbers advantage.
It
There are always
happens.
ones you want back.
It happens when you perhaps have the ball in your hands one too many times. Well, so far the line out hasn't been a great success. Let's see what happens here.
That's better.
Straight
Clean ball.
enough for the referee.
I think we saw a few close to being not straight yesterday, and the theme seems to be play on.
Yes, yes.
But Ontario have lost possession again. They're having a hard time holding on to the ball in these breakdowns.
You know, I'm not sure about Nova Scotia's tendency. I know they want to get into that end, but they're giving possession away, and if you do that one too many times with Ontario, you're going to get burned. Oops.
She's found space, the Ontario fullback, and they're putting on an all right chase. Let's see.
Oh,
They say
there
a
we
kick
go.
is only as good as its chase.
She
So
just got mauled at her own 25-yard line. But they still managed to meet. Oh, look at that space. Come on, folks. Oh, that was unfortunate.
well, poor
But
identification
there's still
of
people
space.
there. There's still people there. You can still keep it going here. We saw a lot of them using a pot of 3 yesterday, but perhaps they used it a little bit too much. That
Moving the
could
ball
have
to
been
the
interesting.
outside. It's a nice pass from that Celtics number 10.
One of the problems is their receivers are not moving forward, so every time that favors the Ontario defense moving up.
Oh, nice
Good,
two
solid
shoulder
tackle.
Really stopping the Celtics.
Still
in their
keeping that
tracks.
suspended. Well, if you see that gap, I guess you're going to take it. And once again,
Well done. Way to shut the gate. That winger came up and closed that option. 'Cause
yeah,
she
that was very
beat on the
smart.
outside.
Oh, what do we got here?
Getting a little bit too close to that injured player, I think. So the ref's chosen to blow it up, and we'll resume with a scrum once we've taken care of that player. An interesting choice since she's back on her feet and doesn't seem to be.
We'll see how long it takes for her to. Yeah, it looks like she's going to be operational pretty quickly, but I don't know whether they're not taking advantage. They're just taking a little bit of a timeout here. Well, the referees decided, let's get back to work, folks.
Absolutely. Let's get it going. Well, it's been a battle for the first 15 minutes of the game, but it seems that neither team is really able to break that, that 22. They're really playing in that middle third of the field.
Yeah, and it's also the question of using your opportunities when they present themselves.
Might be a bit of the difference from that. One of the differences that we see in these developmental games versus the seniors.
Sure, I think there was a big difference yesterday when we were watching the development, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and then the seniors. It'll be interesting to see the contrast between the way that the play goes and the game that follows. At this point, we've played almost 15 minutes. As yet, no score. And Mr. Verdier, Ontario has had its share of penalties. They may have to talk to them again.
They have. If discipline continues to be a factor, they'll be playing a man short for at least a few minutes.
Oh,
and they might be looking at something there. That was.
I don't think she went past 180, but it didn't look too comfortable. At least the head was not an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to see any of that out there.
Ontario contesting at the breakdown, but not really making much of it. A little bit of she got cleared out fairly well.
Yeah, they might need to make a decision to have more people on their feet on defense rather than contesting at the breakdown, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Well spotted.
A little bit of the old post guard confusion there, folks. No, I'm not so sure the referee is too pleased with that, but they managed to turn the ball over.
Oh, and finding some space
nice
here.
slip
the
away off the
Ontario
straight
13.
arm.
Oh, that pass might have gone a little bit too early, but
Yeah,
she's gotten there in support.
She kind of put her into trouble, to tell you the truth. There were two people ready to jump her as soon as she had that ball.
Absolutely. A fake might have been the better option.
Well, just stretch it as far as you can.
Yeah. Good decision here. Keep them moving forward.
When they decide to punch up in the middle of the field, they're actually getting some action of it. Now, oh, here we go. The referee's got to decide where he's going to stick that penalty.
And what it's for. Did we see what it was for?
God knows.
Oh, he might have been mic'd up with his, I think that might have come from the sidelines. Yeah, it did.
True.
And that was an offside.
True, an offside. Well, this may be an opportunity for Ontario to be a little bit more clinical if they can put this ball into touch.
Mm-hmm. Tough from midfield, with inexperienced kickers, you might be better off to go for a scrum option, nice attacking platform right in the middle of the field.
Well, if they keep on missing touch like that, they're going to have to be looking for other options.
Absolutely. And these are some of the decisions that I think playing at this level will help these players on the field. It'll help them make those decisions. See those different options.
Well, you're going to have to be a little bit more effective on the tackle when you're running into people like that.
Yeah, it's taken 2 to every Celtics 1 right now.
It's kind of interesting that, and
a nice offload.
The 9 scrum, the Celtic scrum half, when she sees an opportunity, she can be pretty nippy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's space, and off goes off the foot.
Off to the foot, well taken by the Blues fullback, and looking for space.
See if we can construct a counterattack here. That looks interesting, and here we go.
Not bad at all. Taking in 2 defenders and getting the ball to the outside.
Just need that little bit of support on the inside.
Here we go. Good support. Well done. Nice flat ball. Good decision. Slipping out of one tackle.
Good decision, bad tackle. Here we go. Yeah, well, we're trying to get that ball moving, but we're getting jammed up when it comes to the critical situation.
Moving a little bit slowly, too, not being attacking threats.
I'm not so sure she was expecting to get that ball. Well, there we go. A nice little step and up the pitch.
Oh, turning on the gas,
and
seeing a mismatch.
We're hoping that wasn't anything like a high tackle, but it doesn't look like the referee's bothered about it. And this looks like it's going over the line, folks.
Ontario absolutely on the front foot, but taking the ball really high into contact, that doesn't look good at all. They're going to get held up here.
We're going to get a good old held up if...
Oh, yeah.
And really, 1 or 2 passes more, it would have been in the middle, closer to the post, a little bit easier to put in, but that good old white line fever.
Absolutely. You're not scoring tries up there.
No. Well, so far, Ontario's scrum has been challenged quite a bit by the Nova Scotia front 5. We'll see whether they can be a little bit more systematic here and get that ball in and out promptly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see this ball flying out the back end.
But if they do lose it, I hope that Nova Scotia sees that there's space.
Nice platform there.
And... well, finally, wasn't pretty, but they got it in.
Yeah, and they've worked for it. It's been 20 minutes of back and forth, so Ontario will be, they'll be happy to have drawn first blood, so to speak.
Yeah, we're halfway through the first half. It's 5-0 for Ontario, and the try actually permits me to, at last, give you the lineup for Ontario. So here we go. Number 1, Jill Linnett. Number 2, Selena McQuaig. Number 3, Charlotte Elliott. Number 4, Chelsea Lawson. Number 5, Daniela Ellis. Number 6, Michaela Stratton. Number 7, Amara Hill. Number 8, Selin LeBlanca. Into the backs, 9, Lexi Smith. 10, Jess Jubarn. 11, Taylor Jordan. 12, Jasmine Ng. 13, Leah Pettis. 14, Stephanie Hovdestad. And 15, Roberta Drummond. The substitutes are Paulina Karavowski, Andrea Vandette, Cassandra Tufnell, Zoe Sticiano, Susanna Baudin, Natalie Armitage, Vittoria Campiotto, and Lauren Walker. There's actually some familiar names in there. Jess Jubarn has been playing at Carleton for the past 2-3 years, and she was also a Quebec under-18 player.
And we have an early substitution here from Ontario as well. Chelsea Lawson, number 4, has left the field to be replaced by Andrea Van Det. So I'm sure she was the player who was down a little bit earlier in the half. So whatever was nagging her at that time seems not to have gone away.
So the convert seems to have passed, and we have a 7-0 for Ontario. They have really just passed the halfway mark.
Picked up well, but driven out of bounds.
We got a bit of a penalty here. Not quite sure what that was for.
Driven out of bounds with a high tackle. I think the arm slipped over the shoulder, so we're looking at a seatbelt tackle.
Somebody's got to remind Mr. Verdier about his secondary signs.
I'm sure it'll be in his review.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if we're doing our referee coaching as it should be done. Well, we'll see whether Ontario is able to clamp down here and keep moving up as systematically as possible.
Absolutely. They'll want to build on the momentum. Looking at a 5-man lineout from Ontario. In and up, nice and clean off the top.
Not really contested by Nova Scotia. That little loop around might actually work. A few too many hands on the ball, otherwise that ball could have been out there a little bit more quickly.
Yeah.
Here we go back to the middle of the field.
Yeah, they haven't so much broken the game line yet. They really started at that
There we have
level.
some space, some usable space, and a bit of a lame duck pass.
Extremely lateral. We keep moving
A
forward.
bit of a lob. And that, I think that was supposed to be that was one offload too many. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, she had the support, but not the converge.
Not quite. Nova Scotia is actually using the ball here, and not quite managed to. Ontario closed the field quite well there. They didn't look like they were going to be impressed by anything that Nova Scotia was going to give them.
And they were short-handed, so they drifted across and really shepherded them towards the sideline. They absolutely did well there. So Ontario's ball again here at the lineout. Let's see if there is a contest. Celtics not really able to get up real fast.
And you can't get up, you can't contest. Well, that looked a little bit nonchalant there. Gave the ball away. Let's see whether Nova Scotia can do anything with it.
Lost
it's their advantage.
No one home in the backfield.
Exactly. But we've gone to a pod, which got nailed right on the spot.
And luckily, the Blues winger has identified it, so they're more covered than they were previously.
Yeah, we're going back to that knock-on. There wasn't enough of an advantage. Well, a good solid stop, I would say.
Mm-hmm. What is nice to see is that in the stands we have both the senior squads of the respective provinces here to cheer on their developmental squads. It's nice to see all the programs being run together like that.
Yeah, I even saw the Quebec women's senior squad passing by, doing a little bit of spying or scouting, whichever way you want to look at it.
I'm sure they'll be watching the next game.
Even though these teams know each other quite well by now.
They do, it's true. We had a bit of an opportunity earlier this year to play some round robins of our regional squads. So always a good opportunity to get some good competition in before the big tournament.
Of course, Jackie's saying our because she is within the staff of the Ontario coaching staff.
Ontario executing their 2 passes away on a turnover, and we are seeing some wheels on the outside. I believe that's number 7, Amara Hill, who's showing her pace and her quality and running that ball all the way down the field.
Well, that's what happens when your cover defense doesn't cover. Give them down that little 5 meters at the outside, and somebody's going to run up that line. So it's just there's a little bit of if Ontario can now sense that they've perhaps got a little bit of an advantage speed wise, this could look a little bit awkward for Nova Scotia.
And difficult to cover on transition. I think the Celtics were late to realize that they were no longer in possession of the ball and didn't really adjust.
Yeah, you've definitely got to stay very aware of what's going on the pitch. Oh, off the post, right solidly off the post. You've seen one or two of those, Jackie.
Yeah, that clang is just heartbreaking.
Indeed. And you can hear the sigh of relief from the other side of the goal line.
Yeah.
Well, we're up to 12-0. We've played 27 minutes. Let's see if Nova Scotia can break something open here. Valdi having a quiet word with Nova Scotia player, with the hooker.
When I had that wrong, it was number 6, actually, from Ontario, but I believe it's still Amara. Oh, and that kickoff has gone overhead. Ontario's had some problems fielding that ball. They'll probably want to have a chat about refining roles and responsibilities and who's going to take that ball in the air. My apologies, folks. Number 6 is Michaela Stratton. So credit where credit's due.
Yeah, yesterday in both games, we seemed to have a lot of problems with senior and development with people taking responsibility for receiving the kickoff. There were a couple of times where the ball was being put right over the head of the receiving player, and nobody else is kind of figuring out, well, do I move back? Do I move forward? So it created opportunities for scrums.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't had to deal with such hot weather yet, but it's getting warm this weekend, so I'm sure we'll see some more responsibility being taken because nobody wants to scrum that much.
And there we've got a lot of pressure being exerted on the Nova Scotia scrum half, and I'm not sure whether they're able. There we go. Put some pressure on them, and they take a penalty, Ontario, and here we go. Just want to make sure that ball's not going to get isolated. Be nice to see us moving across and up the field. Well, we're still going up Route 1. Here it is, folks, the eternal pod of 3.
Oh, starting that run really early.
Yeah. Well, here we are. This is one of these. Again, we're in a development situation, right? You have to learn something called timing. Good contest. Good maintaining possession. Nice little action
nice
here.
Nice counter ruck there. That's going to create some problems
looks
for
like
them.
it even made Mr. Verdier. There. He's not hesitating anymore. He's decided that wasn't too Catholic.
Initially a good steal, but she didn't have the support with her, so then didn't release the ball.
Well, it'd be nice to see Nova Scotia take advantage of this opportunity that's being given to them.
Mm-hmm. They'll want to come away with points being in the 22. Oh, and they've got space on the outside.
But nice little piece of pressure by the Ontario defense slows things down again. And that little scrum half is still being nippy. There's still that little bit of space down around the breakdown. Again, like you've said, Jackie, this is development. There are all sorts of little mistakes. The question of seeing whether we've got players that can read that. They're using that.
Although, relatively speaking, that was a good read on defense, a great tackle taken there, and there's been pretty good maintenance of possession. Oh, and tipped.
Oh,
we're going to see that penalized right away.
Yes, for sure. A bit of hesitation there, and scrum half wasn't sure. But here we go again.
Yeah,
Well, it's very simple to see the both teams have their very distinct pattern of play. It's the question of whether they can use it to exploit what's in front of them. And there we've got a nice little opportunity here. Let's see if we can keep driving forward.
Ontario's going to have to fold to the
Here,
outside.
and there's that last pass going to the ground. Last little piece of execution, not quite up to it. So back to a scrum. 32 minutes played in this half. It's 12-0 for Ontario. Nova Scotia looks like they might be able to get some points before this half is over, but they're going to have to make those last passes. They're going to have to take advantage of the opportunities as they're given to them.
And speaking of those patterns of play, we did see some interesting variation from Ontario in the first few minutes of the game, but they really seem to have settled into a very nice pattern. Which
And now a lack of discipline in the front row apparently at the scrum is going to cost them. Is Nova Scotia going to try to get some points out of this half? Looks like we're going for the old ball in the corner. Well, if they can get that driving maul out of the... did she put it... yes, she did. Is it touch and goal? It went through the touch and goal, folks. Now, that's really unfortunate.
Now, what's this option here, Bill? That
the
Ontario captain's been given?
You've been given an option for 22 dropout. Or you could have gone back to a scrum from where the kick was taken. Yeah. Now they're well behind. It's funny that they're kicking that far behind. Maybe just a question of not knowing where the line is. All of that ends up in another opportunity for Nova Scotia as far as possession is concerned. We'll see what they're going to do with it. The first tackle Ontario's first tackle when attacking that three-man pod is not always as effective as it should be, but now they've managed to get it. Here we go.
And lack of execution. You work so hard to turn the ball over, and then a poor pass makes a knock on. I think
sure, and it becomes the responsibility of two people, the passer and the receiver.
It does.
So here we're back to the scrum, which has not been Ontario's strong point so far in this game. Nova Scotia's had a good go at this. Last time we had a scrum, it turned out to be a penalty. Now I don't know that they're going to. They can get Ontario to make another mistake. Would they refuse a kick in front of the posts?
And the Celtics have an interesting lineup here.
Nice drive forward from Nova Scotia.
Very nice.
But no support on the number 8 pickup. Didn't seem like there was something really organized.
She was taken down quite quickly by the Ontario back row.
Right.
Again,
we've got
trying
some
to
go
take them up
forward
high.
here, and Ontario's trying to rip the ball out of the hands, but doesn't quite succeed. Let's see what happens.
Bouncing to the outside.
Kind of attacking the middle of the field. There seems to be an Ontario advantage. Ontario has gotten possession of the ball, and that may end. Yes, it was a knock-on. And that may end Nova Scotia's ambitions for the moment.
Well, Ontario will have to be disciplined here if they want to exit this area well. It's something they certainly have talked about in their trainings leading up to this session. Maintaining their patience and looking upfield to evaluate their options.
I guess you would know better than most.
Yeah. Not giving too much away.
Never. Back to the set piece. Nova Scotia is definitely... I don't know what's happening with Ontario, but they're not really holding their ground. It's a bit shaky. Everybody will take their time, get set, get back in. We're nearing the end of this first half. We've only got about less than 5 minutes to go.
Ontario's got an interesting option here on the right-hand side of the scrum. And the Celtics haven't matched them for numbers. So
Exactly. We got a lot of space.
Here we go.
That ball didn't come
I
out
would
quite
take that
as prompt
space.
enough.
Well done. And
Reaching for the ball instead of going forward to catch it, folks.
Yeah, that hesitancy, it costs you.
Yeah.
You know, that was a great, scrum platform, well taken off by the 9, and despite the possible knock-on.
Well, it seemed to be just a little bit difficult for Ontario to get going. I felt like it was in a car with somebody who doesn't quite know how to drive with a clutch. Not quite picking up the ball, not quite getting it to right pass, not quite getting the hands up to catch it, and the opportunity just evaporates. Well, this could end up being interesting if the referee did not it happens to the best of us.
And he's getting some applause for the crowd for his involvement in that game.
Yeah, I'm quite sure with that.
Well-natured applause.
With that pink shirt, he was kind of a little bit obvious. I'm not sure whether that wasn't a message he was getting from the Nova Scotia scrum half, as in get the hell out of the way, but. Du gâchis, comme on dit en bon français.
We're having a little chat here. Well, always interesting when you have a back interpreting what your front row is wanting to communicate to the referee.
Exactly. Sometimes I think they need a translator.
Yeah.
The same can be said for referees at times.
Fair enough.
Sometimes the scrum is a foreign country and they never visited.
About 2 minutes to go in this half, folks. Score still 12, Ontario 12, Celtics 0.
Well, give a lot of credit to the Nova Scotia scrum. They seem to be dominating that sector of play, but if we don't get something done with the ball here, they're going to stay off the scoreboard. Off again. Ontario's not getting that collective rush forward, but it is the end of the half. And there, the mystery pass. Nobody knows who that was for.
Not a bad decision to go to the short side, but of course you got to get ball to hand.
There were 3 people there, but somebody had to take it.
Yeah.
Here we go again. The front end of the pod.
Celtics have maintained possession here. They've had possession for the last few minutes. They'll really want to.
Well, if you're going to look at it, and there we got another kind of turnover. And another turnover. End of the half is a little bit messy.
Yeah, giving Celtics the ball right back. Got to take good care.
Somebody could have got, exactly. Take care of the ball. Well, I can imagine that the Type 5 of Ontario is going to be pleased to see the end of the half after hoping that this is the last scrum.
Yeah, I imagine we'll see some substitutions early in the half. It certainly has been a lot of work for them in this first 40 minutes.
Just in terms of wear and tear.
Yeah.
Give somebody an opportunity to get that straightened out. Well, the ball's being channeled pretty well. The 8's having trouble controlling it, though. Scrum half has been doing the Ontario scrum half has been doing a good job of putting pressure in. A nice little surge up the middle of the field from Nova Scotia. Let's see if we can get that ball out. Not quite. No. One Ontario player after another prevented that center from getting that. A small lack of discipline. That's all it takes. Nice little pass here to keep things moving forward.
The tap and go is an interesting decision rather than putting the ball in the corner, although maybe they don't want to chance the kick again.
I think we sense that we're not getting much of an opportunity and trying to get through that little space to pop it out to the wing is not happening. Ontario is good at those double tackles. Oops. The first contact. And have we got... Yes, we've got halftime. The first contact. And
Well, I think Ontario will be very happy to end that half not having conceded any points, especially considering they did play the majority of the half in their own end.
and I think Nova Scotia will be a little bit disappointed having dominated in terms of territory and possession for most of that half, but when Ontario had the opportunities, they capitalized on it and managed to put 12 points on the board. We'll take a little pause here and we'll be back for the second half. Thank you, Jackie. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The second half is about to begin. Ontario to kick the ball off to Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia on your left, Ontario on your right. Mr. Referee is counting the numbers. We seem to have an exchange of players.
Players preferring the right or the left.
No, one coming right off the pitch, yes.
Interesting. Maybe someone didn't know they were coming off at halftime.
Yes, that would be unfortunate. Right off the field and straight to...
Nice height on that kickoff.
Yes, and right...
Oof, well taken.
Right 20 yards. Well, Nova Scotia seems to have changed their game plan a little bit. We'll see if it works for them. We're back to the middle of the field.
Yeah. Well taken by the fullback, and Ontario are going forward. Let's see what happens when they get this ball out to the backfield. We're lined up very steep.
Not managing to make that go.
Oh.
Mr. Referee has actually played a good no call here. It wasn't really affecting anybody, but it doesn't start well.
Was that player back 10? She came up very quickly.
Yes.
Ontario on the wrong side of the ball here, and they're going to get penalized. They have been penalized.
Yeah, that's two very quick penalties.
Yeah. If I was them, I would lay off the breakdown for a while. But again, that's that experience and game management piece. That
exactly, and that's a nice offload in the middle of the field.
Well read by this Ontario player, but a little
close,
bit high again in there.
Yeah, a little bit high and a little bit close to a kind of anticipated tackle. But no, the Celtics are not losing. The Celtics are not losing the form of their game. They're sticking to their pattern, and it's working out, except for that one. That tackle kind of.
Well, they're losing their numbers. They haven't had a lot of players wrap around here. So
Yeah, it's hard to get past that very hard blue line. Here's where Ontario's had trouble maintaining discipline at the breakdown. Nice thrust into the gap, forcing two defensive players to go with her.
Well, taking down the short side, still moving up the field.
Yeah.
But into two shoulders, so they won't go very far doing that.
Obviously, they decided that they've got to score in the first 10 minutes. And... oh, looks like there was an offside here, right in front of the posts. Are we going to score?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, if they can get numbers around the corner. Oh, and a nice tackle there. Hard stop.
Advantage for Ontario. Well, now kicking that advantage. Oh, I wonder if Mr. Micheletti and Mr. Velzien do not seem to have decided that there was anything wrong with that. Back we go to the middle of the field, right in front of the posts. We're going wide, but not managing to pull the string on that ball.
Again, the Celtics just seem to be missing that last little bit.
And it's also kind of looking at the space in front of them going, oh boy, but not quite getting their hands on the ball. Or oh girl, as the case may be. Well, a good start for Nova Scotia. Forced Ontario into a couple of penalties. Let's see if that scrum is still as solid as it was and if Ontario has found a solution. Mr. Verlier making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Player welfare, right? Player welfare.
Player welfare, indeed.
Yeah, Ontario's going to have to take care exiting here. Moving the ball in through the centers.
There is quite a difference between Nova Scotia and Ontario. When Ontario decides to take the ball at speed, they've got quite a bit of go forward, and that go forward from the defense from Nova Scotia seemed to be a little bit on the illegal side.
Mm-hmm.
And there,
a tackle broken.
yeah, or two people deciding that it was yours.
And let's move the ball here. We're choosing to go down the short side.
Yeah. The attack is pretty direct, but you would think they'd want to use the ball a bit more.
Ooh, ball in one hand. I think that might have been stripped, but I'm not sure.
Ontario managed to hang on to the ball. Nice little skip onto the inside there, and then forcing the. But now we've got the Nova Scotia defense on the back foot. A lot of good things happen when you're attacking a team that's on the back foot.
Yeah, if they can keep moving this ball quickly, but Nova Scotia slowed it down enough for them to get organized.
Yes. But there's that goal forward that Ontario's been demonstrating, and they've managed it. They've now gone approximately 90 meters since Nova Scotia missed that opportunity to put the ball in. Oh,
and now they've turned it over. And they're well covered.
Well, there you go. Let's see if Ontario can make something out of nothing here. There's lots of space.
Not sure that's exactly what she wanted, but she's got support and gotten the ball off.
Definitely
Again,
what the defensive player wanted, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Still trying to get it around the outside. Nice little pop back into the middle.
Absolutely. Some creative offloads here from Ontario. And they've maintained, so not bad getting reorganized here.
Yeah. They've lost 50 meters and regained 25 and within about 3 syllables, I think.
Taking off the bounce and moving forward. But again, really slow in that breakdown, and now they've been penalized. Ontario choosing to go quickly.
And there we got a nice little run through a gap.
Nice, much better height going into contact there, especially this close to the try line. Now on the short side again, I think that ball had to go out one more.
But she manages to force it over. And Ontario notches another 5 points. So we're up at 17-0. We've played about 8 minutes in the second half. It's unfortunate for Nova Scotia because they had that nice opportunity, but unfortunately we're not able to concretize. So what happens is Ontario manages to march almost 100 meters back up the pitch, and with one little second effort, managed to get back in and put the ball on the ground.
The Celtics have some good structure in place and some good go forward when they decide to.
Yeah, I think part of the difference is that when Ontario gets the ball in motion, they're pretty hard to stop, and they're good at hitting those gaps and forcing bad decisions on the part of the defenders instead of really just sticking the shoulder in and trying to run them over.
And on the fringes, the Celtics had some issues with Quebec yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see in part whether they're able to maintain their structure, whether they're able also to maintain the ambition. 17 points is not the end of the world, but there are a good 30 minutes left in this game.
That last try was unconverted, so the scores. And kick off. The Blues making their way up to, hoping to make their way up to the midline, but they've passed the ball backwards and not gone forwards. So
I think the referee and his touches just have to be a little bit, and his assistant referees have to have a little bit of a talk about that offside line.
there's some creeping.
Well, if there, we'd be asking questions if there wasn't. It's just when that creeping becomes a bulge.
Ooh, and we have a shooter from the outside.
This could turn into something interesting.
Absolutely. Oh, great decision.
And
Chip that ahead. Just, maybe not the execution we wanted, but I like the variation. I like the creativity.
No, I like the fact that they were getting it out and then just not just getting into the next contact situation.
Mm-hmm.
But there you go. Development rugby, live and learn. Maybe I shouldn't have tried to kick and chase. Maybe I just should have stuck my ears back and go as far as I can.
Fair enough. I never trusted my pace.
But then you weren't on the wing.
I wasn't. That's true.
You were in a more tactical position.
Oof. A messy line out, but ball comes back to the Blues eventually. And they attack down the middle of the field.
The middle of the field is a bit of a handful for Nova Scotia at the moment. They're not having too much success bringing her down.
That player has traveled about 10 meters forward and 20 meters sideways.
Exactly. The ball might have been a little bit better option. Nova Scotia is not doing badly here, but that fullback's definitely covering the ball quite well. Nice little cut back. Takes it on.
Nice pop off the ground.
Exactly.
Great support there.
And here we go again. Nice little bit of offload. Well, when they decide that they want to keep the ball moving, they definitely know how to keep the ball moving. Just got to have that support right in the place that it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Tucking the ball and going ball in two hands here.
Use the space before it becomes occupied, folks. That was just one little pass that they needed to get going.
Very close to being turned over, though. Celtics are doing well to get over the ball.
Yeah, but they've got them at the moment, the first time tackle on the front of the Ontario pod is not happening very efficiently. And the ball is being recycled relatively quickly. Ontario wants to come up and interfere with the space in the middle of the field. Oh, that stiff arm just was a message. Oh,
Ooh.
But that message didn't pass with the ball.
And surprising that the Blues are still in possession there. It looked like a knock-on to me, but we play on.
A penalty. How does that happen at 1 meter in front of the line? No, she didn't release it. Well, we've had missed opportunities at both ends of the pitch for one reason or another.
Well, and credit to the defenses that are putting pressure there and forcing those turnovers, forcing those penalties. A little bit of a relief of pressure here for the Celtics, outside of their 22.
Yes, you can hope that they can use this to build something. But it's kind of difficult for them to... They don't seem to have the capacity that Ontario has for turning the ball up the field quickly and scoring. Mm-hmm. If it's efficient at one point, it's nonetheless a little bit laborious at another.
And they've walked into their 5-man line out here, up at the fake at the front, up in the middle. Bit of a short ball, but tipped back to her teammates.
Well, it got there.
It got there. It wasn't pretty, but it got there.
No, exactly. Let's see what they used the pod for. But Ontario's doing a nice little job of getting two people up on the front end of that pod and just slowing things down. Well, off on the foot again. This time it's better placed, forcing a decision, or not, by the Ontario winger. who turns out to be the Ontario scrum half. At least she's got 9 on her shirt, but that doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything at this point.
Yeah, shifted out to the wing. They've made a few substitutions here, Ontario. So we do have a few new players having entered the game on both sides.
Yeah, it was kind of difficult yesterday in the Nova Scotia-Quebec game, especially in the last 25 minutes of the senior game. There were so many substitutions on the field that it did interfere with the quality of the game. Well, I guess Mr. Referee has decided that the head is the point of reference. And if you can get it in towards the head, it's straight. Oh.
Pass not going to hands.
No, pass
Turned
going
over and turned over again. But
Yeah.
we're coming back to the initial knock-on. It'll be Celtics' possession. A pretty nice attacking opportunity here for them.
That's not exactly what you would have called a sympathetic pass. The pass high and above and behind the head. At which point, if you're a player, you're wondering what condition your ribs are going to be in. But nobody was really very menacing at that point, so that at least there were no safety issues. But I'm sure the passer will be reminded by the potential receiver that, and in fact, I think I even see Beth Bartz making a gesture on the sideline about the movement of the pass.
I had a coach tell me a pass is a gift. Make sure it's a nice one.
You would hope. Mind you, it could be a message.
Both senior squads are making their way to some of the other fields around the corner from the stadium, getting prepped and ready for their game coming up next. The Celtics have lined up 4 on the left and 2 on the right of this scrum, but it's wheeled, so they'll have to go one way.
And Ontario is not solved. They seem to have solved the problem on the power at the scrum at that point, but they hadn't solved the problem on the discipline.
Well taken by the Celtics, playing the short side of the field now.
Well, that's what happens when you give a ball to a person who's not in movement. Go forward. If Scotia can keep this moving forward. It looks like they've got some space out here. A funny kind of shovel pass, but... And no, she's still keeping on her feet. She's still moving forward. If we can get that support over the ball, let's see if we can just keep moving things. A little bit of tugging going on. That first, the first person on the head of that pod really managed to take her down.
Absolutely, that was
They still managed
nice
to get the
tackle.
ball out well to the outside, but they're still facing a defense that's able to slide over and cover that space, such as it is.
Yeah, the Celtics don't seem to be asking questions of the Ontario defense that they're having trouble answering.
Well, then there seemed to be a question answered there on the end of a shoulder, but that was a good decision. Lob somewhat less, but nice little anticipation on the ball. Let's see if we can keep the ball in bounds. Yes, here we go.
And this pot off of 10, taking off towards the middle of the field.
It
and
looked like
making
there was a
ground.
little bit of space in the middle of the field that could have been exploited. One pass more. Oh, a little bit of anticipation, but we were playing a penalty advantage.
And going quick against a defense that's relatively organized, but not coming up quickly.
No, they
so
didn't seem to be ready for a quick tap and go. Was this a good decision to go from this side, or are we going to swing it back across the front of the goal line? No, we're going to pick and go.
pick and go to the short side. Your kicker won't thank you for it.
No, that's for sure.
Backs
looks
ever
like-
ready, ever hopeful.
It
for the
looks
ball.
like Ontario. It looks like Nova Scotia may be able to do something with this. They can take their
Yeah,
time.
so hard to defend from that angle. I think that's in. I think he's got to get closer to the ball here.
And yes,
Oh,
there we go.
Well earned from the Celtics.
Exactly. It was about time.
It was. They'll be happy.
17-5. We've played close to 60 minutes in this game. It's nice to see Nova Scotia be able to punch that one in. They seem to have changed their strategy a little bit. They're more willing to transfer the play with the boot and try and occupy space a little bit and get up the pitch, simply because their way of attacking tends to take some time to develop. And Ontario's been pretty solid on their line defense, especially on the first tackle. The only problem with Ontario at the moment is a little bit of a lack of discipline at precisely the wrong moment.
Here in the stands, we see Celtics coach Jack Hanratty making his way down to the bench. Maybe have a chat with some of his coaches and make
Indeed.
some subs or some adjustments.
And the ball goes wide of the posts, so we're still at 17-5. 17-5 with 19 minutes left to play. So let's see how Ontario responds. They can't be too happy with that. We would hope that Ontario would find a way of picking up the pace here. They know that if they can pick up the pace, they might be able to use that speed to move very efficiently up the pitch. Nice kickoff. Well caught.
Lots of options off that kickoff to that part of the field.
Like you said, once again, Ontario had come up and then just kind of installed themselves. They didn't keep coming up. They didn't keep using the pressure. Nice little catch. Here we go, some go forward. You're not going to get that ball, but that knock on.
Nice tackle jackal there from that substitution coming onto the field for Ontario.
Yeah, there was it was a good, nice little situation.
Yeah.
Here we have a very good view of what's going to happen in this scrum. Don't think we can get any closer than this.
And lots of field to work with.
Exactly. Oh, no.
Ooh,
No.
Ontario might get, they'll have to hold back. They might get called for an early engage here.
Yeah. And it's funny because Mr. Referee is standing right there. I imagine it's not by accident. So far,
Stable
so
enough,
good.
for the ball to come in.
Solid. Ontario, Nova Scotia has had some problems getting the ball out of the feet at the end of the scrum. There's an opportunity here if we can get that ball moving, and no, ball goes to the ground.
Ooh, lots of pressure here. Ontario may have dived on it.
If Ontario can sweep down on it, no, not quite. Tackle and jackal on again. But still, Nova Scotia manages to keep it going. Getting that ball out of the breakdown will be a little bit difficult. Now, missed tackle gives them nice little offload. Now, where is that support?
Oh, nice tracking back here from the Ontario scrum half.
And she doesn't release the ball on the ground. Well, that's what frequently happens when you unfortunately your support has not stayed with you. And you get onto the ground, you're kind of waiting for people. You're going to try and hold on to it for that little moment longer, and you're going to get dinged.
And we have a touch finder.
Yes.
I believe some more substitutions entering the game
Yeah.
here.
We're getting into the last 15 minutes of the game. Some people have got to have a run. Some people may have had their run.
And part of the goal of, I believe, this new format is to give the most opportunity to the most amount of players to get some experience at this level.
Sure. Well, now that is interesting.
That is interesting.
I think, given what had preceded it, and there, a couple of people slipped their tackles, and somebody's going to get loose.
Support's there, though, which is good.
Yeah.
Ball's coming back to the middle of the field. Ooh, nobody wanted that ball, it seems. But well
it
picked
finds
up
hands on the outside, and she doesn't look like, if she can get it in, not quite. We got the support, and she got in.
I believe they're going to confer
I
here.
would hope so.
What would you call that? That was certainly looked like playing the ball while on the ground, but
I don't know.
not sure.
It seems to me that she wasn't quite on the ground. She managed to grab the ball, and there we go.
There we go. Try awarded.
She made a kind of little fanny pivot and got it in.
Well, good for her, slowing down enough to get a good purchase on the ball.
Not
and
exactly
spin around,
a term.
not knock it on.
Having coined the term, I wouldn't expect to see coaches practicing at the next practice.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be doing fanny pivots, but it's like the motto of Glasgow Warriors: whatever works.
Again, if the ball gets across the line and touches the floor, well,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's 22-5. With about 14 minutes left to play, waiting for the conversion. Well, I'm not sure if I was coaching Ontario, big if as that would be, if I'd be completely satisfied with this game. I'd be satisfied in having a go. I just don't know if I'd be satisfied in terms of there goes that ding again, especially when you hit the lower part of the crossbar.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's got 2 for 3. We'll see if she can make it. She can make it 3-all.
It's always that one out of the 3 that hurts, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree, Bill. I don't know. I don't know if Ontario will be completely satisfied with this game.
I think Nova Scotia has looked better in the second half, definitely, than they looked overall in the first and in the entire game yesterday. So I don't think I'd be displeased. Despite the fact that they're going to try scored on them almost immediately.
Ooh,
nice pressure, but nice manage to get the nice offload to get the ball, keep the ball moving, keep the momentum.
Ontario moving the ball, but maybe not evaluating what's in front of them enough.
Well, there were a lot of people there that if each person was to get the hand on the ball, it would become very slow.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit more space and fewer hands.
There we go. Let's have some.
And we're back to an offside.
The theme of this game: breakdown and offside penalties.
Exactly. But now it seems that it's Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia might be getting a little bit tired, start committing things that are somewhat less than orthodox, and so that's going to be an advantage to Ontario. Well, once again, that ball didn't quite, only just made it out of the touchline. Well, you're having spent enough time using your foot, I imagine you spend a lot of hours kicking.
Absolutely, like anything else, time and practice.
And if you want it to work, you're gonna have to. Somebody's gonna have to take a couple of these people and just get out there and say, "Kick to your heart's content."
Oof.
Now that was not a sympathetic pass.
That was not a gift.
No, that wasn't a gift.
No, not a gift I'd care to receive. Ooh. Well, there we go.
We're gonna not quite. They managed to shut that down.
Yeah.
Credit to Nova Scotia. that first time tackle and the second tackle looked a bit iffy. Well, that was an interesting idea.
Oh, yeah, a little bit too deep maybe, but yeah, not a bad idea. Well taken by the fullback.
Let's see if we can get some pressure on the person with the ball. Not quite enough to make anything. And there we go. We managed to slow her down.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Cutting back on the short side.
Those high pressure situations of just fix and pass quickly, transfer that ball quickly across your body. I think it's one of the hardest skills really to master.
Yeah, passing instead of stepping inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Nova Scotia is being pretty efficient here.
Yeah, they're responding. I'm sure they want to finish the game on their own terms.
Yeah, it's at the end of the senior game against Quebec, and there we have a miscalculated tackle, and it looks like there we go.
Great individual effort by that number 10.
Yeah, and
way to back yourself.
Perhaps if I'm the Ontario coach, I'm a little bit critical of the tackling technique.
I think
there we are.
Perhaps we would be. Yeah.
At 71 minutes, Nova Scotia has scored its second try. It's now 22-10. Respectable score as far as I'm concerned. Let's see whether we can get that convert across.
And fairly reflective of the gameplay so far.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that this is contrary to what Ontario was able to do in the first half and exploiting certain opportunities. Now, twice, Nova Scotia has managed to exploit a couple of situations. And actually, the big difference between today and yesterday is they've been able to concretize them. Been able to actually get the points on the board when they should.
Mm-hmm.
Ontario, funnily enough, they were able to reply very quickly with a try, but in general, they seem to be a little bit off balance. They're doing a lot of work, but not getting much profit from it.
The ball's up.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to stick with 22-10. A little bit less than 8 minutes to go.
Eight and a half. Oh, short here. Short kick by Ontario. They were looking maybe to keep possession, maybe looking for the tip back. They're just 10 meters out, but not executed as well.
Whatever they were looking for, they didn't get it. But here we go. Scrum in the middle of the pitch. Now, this has been in a Nova Scotia strong point.
Again, they've gone 4 to the left and 2 to the right of the scrum. And if we look at what Ontario has done, they haven't matched on the far side of the field.
However, my prejudice would be to be coming right, and it seems to be what they're doing. Here we go. And
typically easier to attack off that side of the scrum.
all we needed was for one of those two people to decide to pick up the ball. Back to the pod, back to the first contact. Ontario manages to slow it down. We go into the second pod, but the defense is up fairly quickly, manages to get a little bit of go forward from that. And that nippy scrum half has managed to get through. Where's the support? Oh, the support was there. And we're wrecking over it. That seems to be what the support's role is at this point. Jackal's not coming. And look at that immense hole. And we've got an immense hole with an advantage.
Yeah, Ontario's going to have to dig deep here, be organized. Keep working hard. Last 6 minutes of the game.
Those first-time tackles they're not getting in, and now we're back to getting penalties. Well, good on you, Nova Scotia.
Absolutely. They're smelling an opportunity here.
Well, they're challenging with the ball, and here we go again.
Good decision.
Excellent.
Way to look up and see the space.
Ontario seemed to just look at the breakdown instead of getting into the breakdown, and find themselves with a player who's determined to get to the line, even though there's 2 players to beat. She gets the through and down.
Absolutely. They're closing the gap.
Less than 5 minutes to go. Ontario is only up at present by 7 points.
An important kick. A conversion would put them within reach of a win with another converted try.
And indeed, we would be in the situation of burning the barn. Yeah, she doesn't take too much of her sweet time getting this lined up. You know how those kickers can be.
So particular.
Some time. And...
Oh, she's done it. That's gone
well,
over.
she can take all the time she likes if that's the result.
Mm-hmm.
It's now 22-17, and what is Ontario going to do? And I can tell you one thing, they better come off with that kickoff properly.
Absolutely. They will not want a repeat of a center scrum and giving the Celtics that attacking platform.
Now, if I remember a certain Jackie Titley being in this kind of position, she'd be putting it deep.
I imagine I would, Bill.
She'd be putting it as deep as possible. Make you work up as much of the field as you have to, not just trying to get that quick little steal of the ball at 10 meters.
Mm-hmm. And mount a good defense here.
Yeah, Ontario needs to put on some pressure and get up the field and score quickly. They need some insurance.
Oof, well, they've gone short again, and is it going to go? Oof, just 10. They're quite lucky. That's gone just beyond the 10.
It's kind of weird to see a non-decision by about 6 people. Yeah, well, Ontario does seem to be trying to put a little bit of pressure on. That pod was not going nowhere, but Nova Scotia still managed to control things. Yeah, their game has not lost its shape. It's good to see. Half a decision resulted in a steal.
And here we go. Ontario will want to play smartly here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that ball from the scrum half ended up being a puck in the skates.
Here's this game management piece again. We'll see
go.
how they execute it.
They watched her turn, and you're going to have to put your shoulder in there, folks, if you're going to stop her.
Mm-hmm. Oh, again, though, she might have gotten herself isolated. That's a turnover.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The support wasn't there promptly enough.
Not conservative enough.
And there we go. Well, it's funny to say an Ontario team wouldn't be conservative enough, but
2 minutes to go. The Celtics have 2 minutes here.
I can smell the barn. Nice little chip. Oh, but out. Counting the last seconds of this game. Well, there's been it's been an interesting turnaround in the last 10 minutes of the game.
It absolutely has. I mean, the Celtics showing some character, showing they're playing to the last minute of this game.
Yeah. Yeah, if I was Mr. Hanratty, I think I'd be rather pleased with this. At least he's giving you high fives out there, so looks like he agrees with us.
Why wouldn't he? We're very wise.
Reports are still coming in. Oh, yes. She couldn't resist it. She was already offside, and she had to go and stick her business right into the middle of that ruck.
I thought one of those players might be going fast.
That would have been a little bit of an insult to injury, I think. Well, now, does Ontario just want to play this out, or do they want to get another 5 points and make a point?
We shall see. Anything can happen.
No,
Again, not the cleanest of lineouts.
no, but did the job, and that's a nice little pop in the middle, but doesn't get them anywhere. They read that quite well, Nova Scotia.
Well, Ontario's still looking like they want to take it to the line.
Yeah. But that Nova Scotia defensive line is moving up pretty well, and that looked like it. Oh, managed to just
Very
pop it
dangerous.
out there. And no.
We'll see. We're on ref's time now.
I think we're done. Yeah, there we are. We're done. Well, that could have been a much less interesting game, but at the end of the day, the last 15 minutes made it very positive for Nova Scotia. If I was Ontario, I think by asking myself a lot of questions, but as we've been emphasizing from the beginning, this is development. These people have to be allowed to make their mistakes, but I think on total for 80 minutes, Nova Scotia probably learned more out of this situation than perhaps Ontario did.
Well, they'll certainly have things to talk about in their review tonight and prepping for tomorrow.
I'm sure you'll enjoy that. Well, thank you very much, Jackie. It's been a pleasure as always. And next up, Ontario Senior against Nova Scotia Senior. Thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you in a little while.
Live, les filles?
Ouais. Hey, ça dit pas de carte mémoire, c'est normal, c'est correct?
Non, c'est que t'as pas besoin de peser sur enregistrer. Tu fais juste...
Well, welcome back, folks. We're now faced with the senior game between Nova Scotia and Ontario. We will give you the player lists as soon as I receive them. Right now, we've got the kickoff, which will be received by Nova Scotia. Excuse me, I think that was my mistake. I believe that Ontario is in white and Nova Scotia is in black. Oh, a nice little, almost an interception. It ends up being a knock-on. The referee in the middle of the pitch is Justin Davies. Two touch judges are Chris Micheletti and Valentin Verdien. So we have a scrum down at 20 yards in front of the Ontario posts. All picked up, but not transferred very well. Ontario still manages to control the ball. Nova Scotia defense is quite aggressive. They're getting some decent line speed up to the ball. But Ontario manages to break through a gap. But the ball has gone through forward from the tackle. So we'll have scrum ball being put in by Nova Scotia. Well, that was a kind of a quick attack by the part of Ontario. They saw that space in the defense and went right through it as quickly as they could. However, they were not able to support that opportunist situation, and so we now have a scrum. And here we go, a nice little pickup from Nova Scotia, attacking the line very well, getting to the breakdown. A little bit longer getting the ball going. Nice little pass into the middle of the pitch. We're well situated around the 35-yard line. Are they able to get to the breakdown to make sure that Ontario is not going to jackal the ball from them? The ball is moving quite smoothly. Ontario defense is working hard to keep them outside of the 30-yard line. We'll see whether they can keep going forward. That first little pass from the leader and the leader of the pod is working quite well. Nice little slice through the middle of the Ontario defense. Nova Scotia's got some good go forward going. This little chip over the top. And apparently, no, we've got a penalty here. Yeah. Mr. Davies has seen something. An offside by Ontario. What is the option then? Nova Scotia is going to go for touch. There we go. Nicely placed out of bounds. Line out ball going to Nova Scotia. Little miscommunication at the lineout. Ontario's got the ball. Oh, ball went right through the hands. Is Nova Scotia be able to hold them up in their end zone? Ball is definitely being held up. Will Ontario be able to do something with this? And collapsing them all, says Mr. Davies. Ontario will be able to clear their lines. Unfortunate. Nova Scotia had a nice opportunity due to a lack of communication. But the ball doesn't quite go out of bounds. We've seen a lot of this in the last 2 days. Ball served from the ruck into the pod. Nice go forward in the middle of the pitch from that pod. Nova Scotia sticking to their guns. Nice little switch from a leurre that was done by Ontario backs. And once again, Ontario lacking discipline, and Nova Scotia nicely going forward. Oh, that last pass, we've seen this quite a bit over the last 2 days. That last pass just did not go to hands. But once again, Nova Scotia attacking, going forward, about 10 meters outside of the goal line. Here we've gone back into the middle of the field. Ontario has an opportunity to stop this, but Nova Scotia is using the ball quite well and the contact quite well. Yeah, there might have been an opportunity there to get through, but the fly half from Nova Scotia is giving Ontario defense quite a difficult time. It's difficult to get a hand on her. And there we got that little pick and go, and we've got a try. So, thanks to the pressure and the organization of Nova Scotia, and a couple of little mistakes by Ontario, and Nova Scotia gets on the board first. Ball's up. It's got good direction, but it's to the right of the post, so we'll stay with 5-0. We've played almost 6 minutes in this game. Non, c'était pas converti, ça n'a pas passé. C'est 5.
5-0. Non. Le streaming, il est parti en live là, ou pas?
Well, let's see what Ontario does with this kickoff. They're only down by 5 points, but it looks like Nova Scotia has managed to get a bit of an advantage in the opening of this game. Nice high kick. Not quite caught well enough, but Nova Scotia seems to be able to hang on to the ball at the breakdown. Nova Scotia scrum half, lobbing that into the back of the... Now it's the Ontario wing. No, the pass does not go to hands properly. The ball is quite hotly contested, but Ontario manages to hold on to it. And those first 2 tackles missed. It continues to be a problem. Ontario going powerfully forward. It was a fairly imprecise pass, but nonetheless, the Ontario forwards managed to get their hands on it and in for a very quick, a very powerful try. So we're now at 5-5. Nova Scotia people are going to be asking what the heck happened there.
Quelqu'un peut dire à Martino de revenir? Ouais, Max, on est bloqué sur un replay. Normalement, ça revient tout seul, on est d'accord, normalement? Mais ça revient peut-être pas revenu. Alt I. U, pardon, Alt U.
Ontario's ball is in a bit better position for this conversion.
Non, c'est la même scène qui est bloquée, il y a l'image qui est figée.
Nonetheless, the ball goes wide of the posts on the right-hand side, and we stay at 5-5. Well, the first 9 minutes of the game have given us an exchange of tries, one by Ontario, which was rather quick, and the other by Nova Scotia that was relatively well worked. And here goes Ontario Tackle wildly missed. They're very good at that offload in the middle. We can get this 2-on-1 executed, but no. The pass back in the heels, what in hockey they call a puck in the skates. And that looked like it was going to be 5 points. Fairly easy, but a bad pass or the over-anticipated run, it takes two to make that kind of a mistake. So we come back to a scrum for Nova Scotia. Ontario cannot be very pleased with that final little mistake, but we imagine that they'll be able to get other opportunities. Mr. Davies is not content that the scrum was stable and not moving before the ball went in, so we've got to do it again. Ontario's scrum looks relatively solid. Ontario's trying to work them, but a little mistake. We looked at the defense, didn't look at the ball and lost it. Now Ontario has an opportunity to capitalize. But the Nova Scotia defense scrambles quite well. Let's see what Ontario can do with the ball. Now, got a knock on by Nova Scotia in there somehow. So we come back to a scrum. Nova Scotia ball. Sorry, my mistake. Seems I misinterpreted Mr. Davies' signs as Scrum Ontario, which in fact makes more sense. Number 8 having trouble controlling the ball. Still manages to go forward. Good clear out. Referee seems to be a little bit in the way. However, Ontario still managed to keep going forward. Again, that ball relatively quickly. Nice little drop pass. Good solid hit in the middle of the field by Nova Scotia. Ontario still manages to hang on to the ball. Pull it out of a mini maul and back onto the deck. Still got the ball going forward. Big hits coming in from Nova Scotia, shaking the ball out, but also creating knock-ons by Nova Scotia at the same time. So we're back to an Ontario scrum. We've now played for 12 minutes. Still 5-5. But if Ontario can get organized here, there may be another 5 points on offer fairly quickly. Now, looks like Nova Scotia tried to turn the scrum. Ontario player trying to play the ball quickly, does not play it through or behind the mark, so we're back to the mark, and it looks like we're going to do the penalty line-out. So here we are, a little bit more than 10 yards out of the goal line, out of the end zone of Nova Scotia. We'll see how good Ontario's execution is at the line-out. And a nice driving maul that started here. Can they keep the momentum going? It's a bit of a struggle. I think they're going to try to get the ball out. And the first player on defense had kind of vacated a space that was easy for the Ontario Fly Half to waltz through because she was anticipating a pass into the center. So Ontario scores a fairly simple, what you might call a weak try, through the mistake of simply one or two people on defense on the Nova Scotia side of the ball. So almost in the same place as far as the conversion is of course, a little bit closer in front of the posts. So at the present, we've got 10-5, expecting it to go up to 12-5 after about 14 minutes of play. working out to be a rather nice evening, nice end of the day here in Quebec City. Temperature is relatively warm. Blue sky. Shouldn't need the lights for the remainder of this game. Now we're at 12-5, Ontario. So Nova Scotia is going to have to do something pretty constructive here. Even though it's their kickoff, they're going to have to get in there and create something. Ball caught around the 25-yard line, but tackled. Managed to fight off 2 tackles. We get into a ruck. Contested quite well by Nova Scotia, but there's a gap. Let's see if we can get this 2-on-1. No, not quite. Ontario player brought down in the middle of the field, around between the 50 and the 45-yard line. Ball's being moved out quite well, and now the wing has got a go. We should be able to manage it back inside. Yes, the pass is made back inside, but the player's brought down within 5 meters of the goal line. Ontario still managed to keep possession, 1 step back and going forward for the line. Doesn't look like they've managed to get there yet, but it doesn't look like it's going to take very long, folks. Penalty at 5 meters. Ball quickly played. She's going to be brought back and be asked to execute that movement properly. What are we going to see here? We're going to see a little tap and go, a little kick for touch, a little tap. No, we're asking for a scrum. Well, Ontario's pretty well controlled the scrum pretty efficiently, so that's not a surprising decision. Break off the back end of the scrum, countered by Ontario, but a surge forward from the Ontario support, and they're in over the goal line about 5 meters to the right of the goalposts. So the score goes up again. It is now 17-5 with the conversion practically imminent. We've played 17 minutes. We've not yet reached the midpoint of the first half. Speed of Ontario, speed of execution, speed of recycling the ball is beginning to tell. And there it is. Conversion is good. 19-5 for Ontario. So let's see if Nova Scotia off the kickoff can produce enough pressure so that they can get themselves another 5 points, or at least manage to contain Ontario, but it doesn't look like containing Ontario is a plan. Good kickoff kick, well received at about 25 yards. First tackle is good. Ontario clears out really well. They managed to take that first channel quite well. A fly half, moving the ball into the middle of the field. Nova Scotia has been a little bit more effective, but they're having trouble getting that ball carrier down. Ball bungled by the Ontario. It appears to be one of the Ontario second rows, giving Nova Scotia the opportunity to move forward. A little bit of a rub off of the referee, who seemed to be a little bit in the way there, but carry on. Here comes the Nova Scotia attack. They're not afraid to attack the space. It's a little bit slower than Ontario, but not any less efficient if they can manage to keep the ball moving forward. A little loop around. Are they going to be able to use this? Asking some questions of the Ontario defense that hesitated on the outside there. Somebody should have taken care of that more promptly. Ball being contested at the breakdown. Nova Scotia forward was doing some good work, but referees considered that there was not sufficient advantage of the not release at the tackle situation around the 30-yard line, so we're coming back to that spot. And Nova Scotia will put this into touch and play the line out. Ball is well placed into the corner. Line out will take place at 5 meters. Let's see what Nova Scotia is able to do with this. Playing a somewhat reduced line out. This referee is encouraging the Nova Scotia players to get themselves in the position so we can get this done. Short ball to the front. Seems to have worked. Getting that, trying to get that punch in, and they do. Well, a slightly unorthodox tactic, but nonetheless, they managed to get 5 points out of it. The ball seemed to move relatively quickly from one contact situation to another, and Nova Scotia was able to squeeze it down onto the turf. So we're looking at 19-10, and now we've passed the midway point in this half. So this game could be relatively high scoring. We'll see if the Nova Scotia kicker is able to get it over. She's about 25 yards out and about a little more than 5 meters from the touchline. Well, unfortunately, that was pushed to the right of the post, not enough weight onto it. So we will stay at 19-10. We've played 22 minutes. A little bit of a technical adjustment on Mr. Davies' equipment by his assistant, Chris Micheletti. We should be able to get going in a little bit of time. Here we go. Mr. Micheletti gets back to his position on the touchline. We're set to kick off. Nice and high. Good decision on the reception of the ball. Nova Scotia managing to move forward. Nice couple of good passes. Makes the point of contact a bit variable, a little more difficult for Ontario to defend. Nova Scotia fly half is very difficult to seize. We're playing to the short side, challenging the Ontario defense on the short side of the field. Managed to get a little bit of go forward out of it. Those quick little passes before the contact. Ontario is having a little bit of trouble adjusting. They're very aggressive, but they're leaving some space for the Nova Scotia people to go forward into gaps. Unfortunately, that ball did not quite go to hand. And we'll get an Ontario scrum, and this has proven to be deadly. If you give Ontario possession at a set piece and give them time to get organized, you're going to have to get up and stop them before they can run the ball forward. If you give them 2 or 3 steps, you're asking for it. Well, Ontario doesn't quite manage to control that ball well. And the last Nova Scotia player trying to move forward did not quite get her hands on the ball. It wasn't a deliberate knock-on, according to the referees, just an ordinary knock-on. So we're back again to a scrum for Ontario. And Nova Scotia's relieved the pressure. They're concentrating on getting the pressure up, but they've left some space for the Ontario backs. The support is coming on quite well, but now Nova Scotia has to struggle to stop this Ontario attack, which has got up to inside the 20-yard line. A nice solid hit in the middle of the pitch by Nova Scotia. It looks like the referee's calling that a high tackle. Nova Scotia is trying to put on the pressure. Ontario maintains possession of the ball as we move from left to right. Hitting defense pretty solidly. The ball keeps on moving forward. Nice little shift inside to outside, and Ontario finds itself inside of 10 yards of the Nova Scotia line. The play will come back right to left, knocked into the forwards at about the height of the numbers, around 10 yards. Ontario still manages to press forward a little bit, going back to the blind side and somewhat forward again. I imagine we're going to open the game up a little bit here. Missed first tackle. We're at about 5 yards from the line, and we're going back to that penalty. And it appeared to have been an offside. We're right in the middle of the field, just to the left of the posts. Let's see what Ontario tries to do, or chooses to do. And they've opted for a scrum. Well, it's interesting that they have such confidence in their scrum at this point in the game. It has been pretty solid up to here. But Nova Scotia has a fairly organized pack, so we'll see whether or not they can't make Ontario regret that decision. Scrum turning a little bit. Number 8 pickup. Ontario manages to get the ball safely into a ruck. Playing a pod right in the middle of the field in front of the post. They're only about 12 yards out. One-on-one tackle is coming in a little bit too high for Nova Scotia. They're not getting them dead on the spot. Little fake and go, and Ontario center manages to slice through the defense, handing off one player and then another, and then getting the ball down in the end zone. So once again, the speed of execution has been profitable for Ontario. So we're now up to 24-10. We've played 28 minutes, waiting for the conversion. Conversion fairly contested by Nova Scotia. Nonetheless, ball gets kicked high and between the posts. So now we're up to 26-10. Well, this is by no means being a one-way game, but for sure, if Ontario manages to accelerate, it's difficult for Nova Scotia to keep up with them. A little bit less pressure than Amplitude, but a miscalculated pass results in a knock-on, and we get an opportunity from Nova Scotia at the 30-yard line. So Ontario not taking care of the ball efficiently enough off the kickoff, tried to pop a pass that did not get received properly, and now we've had a substitution in the front row for Nova Scotia. We'll see how much of a difference this can possibly make in the next scrum. It is an important scrum. Nobody on the blind side for Ontario. There we go. For Nova Scotia side, we've matched up. The blind side is a big enough, interesting space for somebody to be able to use, but we'll see what happens. With the way that the rest of the Ontario backs and the Nova Scotia backs are placed, this might be an opportunity for the back row and the scrum half to do something on the blind side, but we'll see. And there it goes, open side. Quick little pass in the middle of the field, not quite tackled efficiently. Ball keep moving forward from the support. We've managed to move this down with Nova Scotia to 20 yards, and unfortunately, Nova Scotia player gets contested and does not release the ball. Ontario moves quickly off the penalty, going through another tackle, and we're off on the wing. Is she going to manage to keep things going forward? Ball stays in bounds about 5 meters in from the left sideline, and we're going up. Nice little cut. Still keeping forward. We're up to about 35 yards. I'm in a little bit of difficulty getting that ball out. Again, another bad pass, and Nova Scotia profits from it. They managed to getting themselves up. They're making the ball, and as a kick forward from the scrum half over the top, caught it about 40 yards, and Ontario wants to counterattack, moving from left to right. Kick out into the flank just over the top of the Nova Scotia player, but caught by the fullback, who gives a kind of an inaccurate pass, and which looks like it's going to result in the ball for Ontario. But no, Nova Scotia still is managing to hang on to the ball, being contested by and getting slightly through the gap, getting the ball through. If the support was there, that looked like a good offload opportunity. Nice little pop through here. Ontario is just working their pattern of play. Nova Scotia is working their pattern of play, trying to hit those gaps. And unfortunately, Ontario manages to turn over the ball fairly quickly at the 25-yard line. Nova Scotia is trying to defend. Managed to get the Ontario player to the ground. First time tackle. Still, Ontario has a lot of go forward, and a referee saw in the last transfer of possession a little bit of a pass forward. Good thing that he's closer to the game, because that happened so quickly. It's not everybody that would have seen it. We played 33 minutes. I imagine that Nova Scotia would like to stop Ontario here and at least come out of this half with a 16-point margin instead of it being increased anymore. However, Ontario would not like nothing better than put another 5 to 7 points on the board. But Nova Scotia managed to get the ball. They managed to take it from the base of the scrum and move it forward another 10 yards. Back to the traditional pod. They found a bit of a half gap and are trying to push things forward, which they managed to do and get up to close to the 45-yard line. And a little mini pod. Go into the contact, bring it up to the gain line. Make sure the defense stays where it is. Ball caught at the end of the fingertips. Ontario trying to contest possession, but not quite making it there. A nice little slip onto the inside. Keep those legs moving the ball forward. We're up to near the 50. Once again, working every little inch. Contact, drive forward, move those legs, go to the ground. A little chip that was blocked by the Ontario player who managed to go back and tackle the Nova Scotia player who had recuperated it. There's an advantage on, yes, I believe Mr. Davies decided that was too high a tackle, at least one hand over the shoulder. So that, to a certain extent, saves Nova Scotia. So we're able to get a good touch finder here. We might be able to play the last 5 minutes of this half more in Ontario's end. Line out at the 45-yard line. Ontario manages to disturb Nova Scotia lineout enough that they're able to grab a loose ball. But Ontario over-anticipates on the defense, and the 9 makes them pay for it and gains about 20 yards out of it. Another first-time tackle missed. The Ontario player managing to fend off 2 or 3 Nova Scotia players as she moves forward. And now we're at the 10-yard line. A nice little pass with one hand. We're inside of 10 yards. Looks like Ontario may be able to seal this. And there we get a nice little pass. The Ontario defense had not marked up properly. Not entirely sure of what the referee's call here is. He's gone to talk to the touch judge. He's not declared a try. I think we're going to have a 5-meter scrum. I'll wait for the consultation between the 2 officials. Less than 4 minutes to play. No try. Held up. 5 meters. Scrum Ontario. Well, good effort by Nova Scotia, but they've still got some work to do before the halftime alarm sounds. Scrum to the right-hand side of the post if you're Ontario. Ball goes in. Nova Scotia contesting quite strongly, but the 8 had managed to get it to the Ontario player coming on, and we have a try. So less than 3 minutes to play. We're up to 31-10. Lining up the conversion about 20 yards out to the right-hand side of the posts. No, it does not go over. It gives Nova Scotia a little bit more breathing room, but not much. They're down by 21 points. They certainly can't allow any more points to Ontario. We'll see if Ontario manages to close out this half as it should. We've only got a minute and a half to play, a minute and a half or 2 minutes to play, depending on what the referee has on his watch. A little bit deeper in the Ontario end than usual, but it's brought out fairly quickly. Ruck properly executed. Ball's going back into the support. Ontario looks like they'll want to grind this out. Good tackle in the middle of the field. They're trying to hold that player up, but it's not really succeeding. Another good tackle to shorten the Ontario attack, but that scrum half has certainly been giving them trouble all game. She managed to slip through the tiniest gaps, and we're already up to the middle of the field from the 30 yards. A little bit of a skip pass. Doesn't quite do much. Nova Scotia managed to get there. We're still in the middle of the field, so we haven't really gotten across the gain line. Let's see what can happen here. Ontario still moving forward, still grinding out the ruck. A little bit of a high pass. Could have put the 10 in danger. As it is, Nova Scotia managed to get up quickly enough to shorten this, but there's a lot of people on the blind side. As it is, the pass has gone out. They managed to move forward over the 50 yards. Trying to recycle it. Nova Scotia is contesting the ball, and there the arm goes out, and then they contested a little bit too much. Result, penalty. Well, the half is pretty well over. We'll see what Ontario decides to do here. Are we going to take a break, or are we going to go for more points? Well, it appears that, yeah, we're going to call it. So, after 40 minutes of play, 31 for Ontario, 10 for Nova Scotia. We'll return to you for the second half kickoff. Well, we're just about set to go to start the second half. I'll remind you the score is 31-10 in favor of Ontario, who will now kick off to Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is to your right. Ontario is to your left. So here we go. Kick off pretty well into the arms of the Nova Scotia player. Contested immediately by Ontario. Manages to make some ground. Here comes the well-constructed Nova Scotia attack. Moving the ball a little bit more quickly than usual because of this Ontario pressure, which there eventually... That's a 2-on-1 tackle. Makes it difficult, but Nova Scotia still manages to creep forward. They're coming onto the ball a little bit harder, a little bit faster than they were in the first half, so they're obviously making an adjustment, and Ontario is getting caught a little bit behind the play. Nice managed move up the far side wing. Ball is moving quickly into the middle of the field. Eventually taken down, but Nova Scotia is moving the ball quite well. A gap. A good offload, but the ball is stolen. Little pop pass going down. Player controlled by Nova Scotia, put to the deck. Ontario still controls the ball. Good aggressive defense by Nova Scotia does not allow Ontario to move very quickly to the front. A little bit of trouble controlling the ball, but it doesn't go forward. Ontario's game has become a little bit laborious, and in fact, it looks like Nova Scotia has managed to steal the ball off the ground, managing to get through those little offloads just behind the defense. Nova Scotia continues to move forward. Nice little handoff. Ontario contests the ball. It looks like we might be yes. It's a penalty for not releasing. That seemed to be inevitable. However, here we go. Ontario will probably be kicking for touch. Move the ball down the pitch. Keep going forward. And there you have it. Lineout will be played by Ontario between the 40 and the 35-yard line. Ontario comes off the top, moving very aggressively into the middle of the field, but stopped very quickly. Good hard contact. Nova Scotia appears to have won the ball out of that. Yes, they have. Moved the ball a little bit from left to right. Still being able to move forward. The Ontario defensive line is pretty hard to get past, but they're managing to drag things through and make about another 5-10 meters, and off we go again. But Mr. Referee decided that we were not releasing the ball. Ball played quickly by Ontario. Kind of an unorthodox pass that eventually went forward. I think the 9 had to think a little bit more about that pass before she let it go, but there it is. It'll be scrum Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia put in. Mr. Davies is not too pleased about the way that came together. We'll have to do it all over again. Is this going to be solid and square and straight? Looks pretty good from here. Good put in by Nova Scotia. Number 8 keeps it going forward, but after that first pass, the two defenders from Ontario managed to push things back. But still, Nova Scotia managed to retain possession, managed to keep moving forward, inching its way up the field. Ontario managed to keep that player up, but has now gone to the ground. Keeps going, moving forward, and the ball has been stripped so that it's Ontario playing the ball from the ruck out to the wing, and there they found some space. Two people didn't quite make the decision on the tackle, and the result is an Ontario try to the left of the posts, about 10 yards. So if that had, if there had been a proper good stick tackle at about 15 yards, probably that try wouldn't have happened. But there you have it. The ball carrier managed to get the ball in one hand over the top of the defenders and swing it back over to the left so that the support player was able to catch it and move forward and put the ball down. So now we're up at 36-10 and have played approximately 4 minutes in the second half. And it's through, which means that we come up to 39-10. Well, this is just going to make it that much more difficult for Nova Scotia. They're going to have to find their own resources to be able to move this ball forward. This does make it a 21-point difference. A little bounce forward off the hip or off the arm of the Ontario player on reception of the kickoff means that we will have a scrum between the numbers and the hash marks on the 40-yard line. Possibly not looking at the ball and looking at the person coming on to tackle resulted in a misplayed reception. Scrum being pushed quite well forward by Nova Scotia, but penalty called by Mr. Davies. Ontario moves the ball up the field very quickly. We are at about center field. Ball being shifted from right to left. We've got a 3-on-1 at the outside. Lots of space for those Ontario runners, but a good tackle around the 25-yard line. And here comes Ontario again, shifting the side of the field of play. We're right in the middle. Ball is being played out of the ruck on the ground. Now the ball doesn't quite go to hands, and it looks like Nova Scotia has been able to take this off of the advantage. The referee saying not enough of an advantage, folks, coming back to the scrum at the numbers on the 30-yard line. Well, if not for a little bit of misexecution by Ontario, Nova Scotia could be still in a little bit more trouble again with another 5 points in the field, however. Nova Scotia has made an effort to bring things back into control, and we're going to have a scrum at Nova Scotia. Good solid scrum by Nova Scotia, pushing this forward. It has been the strongest part of the Nova Scotia game for yesterday and today. That set piece has been fairly strong. In fact, stronger today than it was against Quebec yesterday. Ball being quite quickly by Nova Scotia. there was a little bit of illegality at the breakdown. Nova Scotia moving nicely forward, managing to take advantage of a little bit more space, but still the Nova Scotia ball carrier manages to move forward despite being pushed back quite a ways. Playing the ball out of the ruck again, moving back and forth across the field. Nice little offload, manages to gain another 7 or 8 yards. And if we can get this ball moving a little bit further outside, we might see some more action. But we move back inside, right into the teeth of the defense. Nova Scotia still manages to keep control of the ball, but Ontario stole the ball, but not in a legal manner, so they just got sanctioned. Bing. There you go. Nova Scotia will get the ball. And they have asked for a scrum, so they're feeling it. They sense that they have an advantage at the scrum, so they're going to play it from the scrum. More power to them. Nicely controlled scrum. Ball comes back to the number 8, who managed to make a nice cut right up the field. Good support, make sure they maintain possession back into their pod, which now seems to have between 3 and 5 players in it, so they put a little bit more muscle in there. And 3 recycles of the ball, and they've already made about 30 yards, so more power to them. And then the nice cut through from the wing. We're up to about 10 yards in front of the goal line. Nova Scotia is still managing to play on the short side. Let's see if they can we can maintain possession here. Yes, the ball moves out. Well caught. We're within about 7 yards of the line. Moving forward, nice little slip through the gap there. And it looks like we're going to get over. Yes, they've managed it. Have they managed it? Yes, they've managed it. It seems to get over the goal line right in front of the posts. Nice little cut up the field into the middle. Well, the answer from Nova Scotia was relatively quick. So that gives us some reason to be a little bit more optimistic about the last 30 minutes of this game. It's presently 34-15 in favor of Ontario, but that surge looked very good. Nova Scotia looked very good on that, and Ontario seemed to have taken a pause. And the conversion is good, so another 2 points for Nova Scotia. Let's hope that they can maintain this kind of quality of play. We've got another 30 minutes to get through here. The Nova Scotia development team, even though they lost at an excellent end of game against the Ontario development, so we'll see what Nova Scotia can do for the balance of this game. Here we go. Kickoff comes down to number 17 of Nova Scotia, slipped off to another Nova Scotia player who managed to make it forward another 5 or 7, now even maybe 10 yards forward. Difficult to bring these girls down. Unfortunately, the ball went a little bit low. We ended up with a bit of a knock onto the usual three-person pod, so we'll get a scrum Ontario at the 40-yard line. Well, that scrum is turning. We're not sure if it's turning legally, but Nova Scotia manages to get out of it and get another 5 minutes forward. A nice little slip pass, and Nova Scotia managed to get through that first tackler. Ontario was not as efficient defensively as they were. But there we go. Nova Scotia being contested, does not manage to release the ball properly. Nice little flip pass. Ontario's up around the 35-yard line, moving the ball from right to left. Takes on 2 tacklers. Ontario still not moving forward that much, but this little kick into the corner, well seen by the Nova Scotia winger, who is not so easy to bring down, but eventually brought down at 15 yards on the numbers. Still, Nova Scotia keeps the ball and managed to kick over the top, out of bounds at 35 yards. Well, it seems that Ontario is not going to have as easy a task in these last 25-26 minutes to put more points on the board. Nova Scotia, I think, has decided that they've had enough. Line out thrown. Eventually, that is brought down by Nova Scotia. Didn't look straight, but it was brought down by Nova Scotia, who have managed to move forward about, a good 20 yards. And now there's a bit of a break. Nova Scotia managed to get a couple of offloads in. Back into the pod, challenging that Ontario defense, which doesn't seem to be as aggressive as it was before. A little bit of a dummy run, trying to occupy the players. That ball wasn't caught properly, and what happens? Ontario picks it up right off the bat. You can't give them an inch. A little bit of a lazy runner from Nova Scotia, but the referee seems to think it's okay. We're off on the wing. Ball being picked up by Ontario. Moving forward, you're going to have to tackle her lower if you're going to bring her down. The ball is at about 40-yard line of Nova Scotia. Bobbled, but transferred to another Ontario player. It keeps moving forward, but Ontario is trying to run around the defense, which does not seem to be the best plan of all, but they're actually moving to the blind side. There's usually some advantage there that they're able to find. Here we're going back straight up with another pod. Down it goes, recycled back out. Let's see what we can do with the ball. And right through the middle of the pitch, but referee didn't see an advantage there. There was a penalty. So, penalty. Ontario will be trying to kick this out of bounds from about the middle of the field. It doesn't look like it's going to make it. And in fact, it did a knock-on by there seems to have been a knock-on by the Nova Scotia winger, but it wasn't quite knocked forward, so they're playing it Nova Scotia ball. Player with the ball tackled, but managed to go down a little bit further. A little kick over the top, just to relieve the pressure, just enough time to relieve pressure, and so we're going to have a lineup from Ontario. Subs coming in for Nova Scotia. We're at the 30-yard line. It will be Ontario lineout. Mr. Davies decided that that one was not straight. So it should be no surprise that we're going to a scrum for Nova Scotia. Taking a little bit more time than usual to get that scrum set. However, safety first. And the number 8 from Nova Scotia managed to move forward. Only one person taking her down, but it doesn't take long for the ball's out and into a pod from Nova Scotia, and we're moving back up in the middle of the field. Nova Scotia taking good care of the ball at this point, but someone going so many times as this into contact, eventually somebody's gonna drop the ball somewhere. And that was a kind of an effect of it right there. The ball went scooting along the ground without anybody seeming to be in a position to catch it. So it puts them back into a position where they got to work their way up through the middle of the field. But Ontario's got that blocked up pretty efficiently right there. Moving the ball laterally, but it's fine going forward. Nice little offload backwards, but the Ontario player, no. Yeah, we're going back to a knock-on by an Ontario player out on that side of the field. It's not very easy to see who the guilty party was, but there you go. Back to another scrum. So we're nearing 20 minutes left to play in this game. It is 39-17 for Ontario. Nova Scotia scrum. A little bit more contesting from Ontario, driving that Nova Scotia scrum backwards, and that results in a penalty. Played relatively quickly, but no, Mr. Davies decided that has not been played through the mark. So we're going to come back to the mark and do it again. Yeah, we won't do the same thing again. We'll put it into touch and try and play the rolling maul. So we're going to line out for Ontario at about 15 yards. Ontario players seem to be having a caucus to decide what to do. No doubt Mr. Davies will encourage them to get more promptly to the line of the lineout, but there is a substitution that's been moving in slowly but surely from the Nova Scotia bench. So I imagine we'll just have to wait a little bit until that extra Nova Scotia player manages to get herself off the field. Not too far for that now. Nobody quite got hold of that ball, but eventually it seems that Nova Scotia has gotten control of it. Trying to kick over the top, but blocked by one of the Ontario forwards. Nova Scotia comes back in and gets it. We're going to go to the same tactic, but this time it does not get blocked, but goes to the winger. Ball dropped forward. Seemingly no advantage on that situation. Referee calling for a stoppage of play. It looks like there's some kind of an injury over on near that touch line. Et on est de retour. On semble être prêts. Tous les petits bobos sont réglés. Oh, excusez. Sorry about that, folks. I slipped into French. What can I tell you? Well, we're back into the scrum. It seems that a little bit of a problem with an injury has been resolved. We're waiting for this to get going on the other side of the field. There are about another 15 minutes to play in this game. Scrum engaged, ball put in, looks pretty stable. Nova Scotia's dominated that phase of play, but there we go. Bad pass in the middle of the pitch, pressure by Ontario. Ball forced pretty well back into the end zone. Ontario should be able to nab the Nova Scotia runner there. We'll see if Nova Scotia can do at least a little bit of a chip over the top, but it goes straight into the arms of an Ontario player at the wing. Well contested, but penalty against Nova Scotia. Right, so here we go. It'll be line out Ontario, about 5 meters out from the Nova Scotia line. Sir Davies reminds the Ontario players to get this on the road. This is probably going to be caught, hold, and driven. Let's see how they do it. Oh, Nova Scotia manages to steal the ball and move forward another 10 meters. Well, what do you know? Again, the scrum half trying to kick it over the top, gets into the forest and manages to catch a branch, and it goes off the branches out of bounds, and it is going to be Ontario ball at the lineout. Well caught. I'm up at the top, but the Nova Scotia pressure is coming on fairly hard. They're trying to run around, and an imprecise pass goes out floating onto the wing and is finally caught, but the player is caught also by the Nova Scotia defender. Ball's coming back out, going back across the field. Good Nova Scotia defense is slowing down the Ontario attack. We got an advantage for Ontario here in the middle of the field, but Ontario is surging forward. It's very difficult for Nova Scotia to bring them down at this point. That was a decent tackle there, but they've still got possession, Ontario. Now we're going back to the penalty, which Mr. Davies saw before. It was quite evidently a high tackle. But it seems to be the tackler that suffered the consequences more than the tacklee. Well, it's the first time in 2 days I think we've seen this. They've taken the option to take the penalty kick. Despite the fact that there's been many opportunities for that, we will see they're asking for the kicking tee. About 25 yards out, right in front of the post. This should be almost a formality. However, if she doesn't put it through, we may discover why they didn't take this option. Not as if another 3 points is going to change much of the outcome of this game, but I imagine this is for the sake of having the experience of making this kind of a kick in this kind of a game. And there we have it, straight through and up between the posts. So we're up to 42-17. We've played almost 69 minutes. Let's see whether the last 11 minutes are going to be eventful. Ball recuperated by a Nova Scotia player. It seemed a lot of Ontario players just watched that ball come down instead of going and catching it. Ball coming into the middle of the field. Nova Scotia apparently has not given up the ghost there. They've got a little bit more of go forward in their game anyways. And they're a little bit more of a drive forward off of the last player. They're still maintaining possession of the ball. There's some place, there's some space, there's some people to get into that space. Are we able to going to get somebody across this line? Nice use of space by Nova Scotia. Nonetheless, they managed to get up the fall. They're about 10 yards from the line. Ontario trying to contest the breakdown, but it's not really working. Well, the first time Ontario tackles, they're not happy. They're not as brusque, they're not as aggressive as they were before. Let's see what Nova Scotia can do with this. Ball brought a little bit too far back. I think a little bit of a communication problem. Still managed to maintain possession. Ontario comes up a little bit brusquely, and we managed to get it to the winger, who's still moving forward. Back into the middle of the field, back into one of those infamous Nova Scotia pods. We're inside of 20 yards and a penalty against Ontario. Well, the perseverance is paying off. Pass kind of mistimed, but it looks like we're going to profit from it here. Nova Scotia still keeps moving forward. A clear out, and there we go. And unless I'm mistaken, that's Olivia DeMerchant who just rolled over the line. So persistence pays off. The good thing that Nova Scotia has not abandoned the boat, because with less than 10 minutes to play, it's come up to 42-22, which will not change the outcome of the game, but certainly in terms of satisfaction, I'm sure the Nova Scotia girls feel much better going into these last 8 minutes than they did before. Unfortunately, this means also that one of the Nova Scotia players is going off the field with what appears to be something of a knee injury. We'll see whether the Nova Scotia kicker can get this over the bar. Well struck, right direction, just a bit short. So that's where we are. 8 minutes left to play, 42-22. Ontario to kick off. Well, and here we go. Ball is not quite caught, but eventually caught around 10 yards. Moved forward fairly quickly. Ontario not quite contesting this as well as they could. Kicked up. You can see if Ontario... no, two people who made the wrong half decision, but Ontario's number 23 has just sliced through about 4 people in the Nova Scotia defense and is turning it up in the middle of the field. So we went straight back up to 20 yards in front of the pitch, and there's plenty of space and plenty of people out there, and there we go. Ontario will score. Well, it's to be expected that with the speed that Ontario has, if this game breaks open, that's the kind of thing that will happen. So for the moment, we have a score of 47-22 with less than 7 minutes to play. up and over and through, so that adds another 2 points. It is now 49-22. There's a little more than 5 minutes left to play in this game. We'll see how much gas Nova Scotia still has after they kick off, whether it can manage to keep Ontario in their own half of the field, or whether Ontario is going to manage to use that speed to slip themselves out of Nova Scotia's grasp. Kickoff just over the 10-meter line. Ontario's got possession, moving the ball. And there we cut through a gap. That tackle wasn't made. As soon as you give them some space, it's going to be dangerous. Eventually, another Ontario player catches the ball that's been bobbled backwards. Moving back from right to left, cuts back in the middle of the field. We're at about 35 yards in front of the Nova Scotia posts. Here comes Ontario again, cutting through that Nova Scotia defense, which has trouble moving laterally. And Ontario gets a penalty for not releasing the ball, so they were not as efficient as at their rate of speed as they might have been. So let's see what Nova Scotia decides to do with this. Looks like we're going to be kicking for touch. So a short line out. Nonetheless, the ball has gone straight out. We're at about 40 yards. Nova Scotia ball. Ball not at all straight. And what Mr. Davies says is that Ontario was closing the gap. So Nova Scotia moves up pretty quickly but throws the ball away. And Mr. Davies decided Ontario was not back 10 fast enough. So back into the hands of the Nova Scotia players. And I imagine we're going to kick it down the pitch. No, we're going to play it. And straight up into the middle of the field. I think it's Olivia de Merchant leading the charge. Another Nova Scotia player. We're now at the 40-yard line. Here we go. Good solid tackle, but doesn't stop Nova Scotia from still going forward. That was a pass that was only pushing the receiver into the tackle. Ontario trying to recuperate the ball. And we find a gap. Nova Scotia now up to the 25-yard line, and a penalty. Not releasing before the ball was available. Nova Scotia still has some ambition here. And they lose the ball, unfortunately. 5 meters in front of the line, and they unfortunately lose the ball in contact. So in the absence of support, here's Ontario moving up, but bobbling the ball and making a knock-on. We're playing an advantage. Let's keep it moving forward. Nova Scotia keeps at it. They were saved by that knock-on by Ontario, and here we go, slip right in through. Looks pretty close. And yes, Nova Scotia manages to put in another try just before the game ends. Second game in a row where Nova Scotia has managed to get points, one would say, that contribute more to morale than anything else. But nonetheless, when you're on a long bus trip ride back to Halifax or wherever in the Maritimes, a little bit more moral support is not going to do you any harm. Still in all, I think that Ontario's got a few things to sort out before they hit the pitch against Quebec tomorrow. Should be a very interesting game. But at the moment, let's stick with this and play it out to the end. Well done by the Nova Scotia kickers, so that makes it 49-29. And Mr. Davies, somewhat mercifully, has called a full time. So that's the end of this game and the end of this day. Nova Scotia Seniors 29, Ontario Blues 49. We'll see you back here tomorrow in French for Ontario versus Quebec Development, and then Quebec Senior versus Ontario Seniors. Till then, signing off, Bill McNeil. See you later.